Hi, I'm Pete Chow. You may know me from the RTO Show podcast, but today I'm doing something a little bit different. APRO and Wow Brands have launched a special project to bring the story of our industry to life like never before. They've asked me to sit down with some of the true legends of rent-to-own, capturing their stories, their impact, and their vision for the future. And now I get to share those conversations with you straight from the legends themselves. All of this leads to something groundbreaking though, a new book, The Rent-to-Own Revolution, A Definitive History of Advocacy and Consumer Access, written by APRO CEO Charles Smitherman and Wow Brand CEO Brian Krass. The book explores the grassroots of RTO, the advocacy that has defined it, and the future that we're building together. Here's where you come in. We're giving away free copies once the book is released. Just head over to the RTORevolution.com and sign up for a chance to receive a copy in early 2026. Don't miss the chance to be among the first to hold this piece of RTO history. That's RTORevolution.com. Check it out and become a part of RTO history. Hello, welcome to the RTO Show podcast. I'm your host, Pete Chow, and today we've got a legend here. Now, most of the time I usually say, you might not know because these guys have done it a long time ago. Now they sit back, they have the ability to run it from afar or kind of do things a little bit differently. Not Mr. Michael Bennett, not Michael Bennett. He is in the trenches all day long. I think I see your face everywhere, Mike. I think, whether it be the APRO meetings or whether it be the board meetings or whether it be, just something that's going on Buddy's Home Furnishings. I've seen a lot of the guys. I see Mitchell Lee everywhere, right? I see him on the podcast tours. I see him everywhere. He's been on the show, done a great job. How are you doing this morning, Mike? How's everything going?
Hey, doing great, Pete. Glad to join you finally, right? You've been after me for a while. So excited to be here with you this morning and share a little bit of my history. So
just so you guys know, I'm trying to nail Michael down, and I've got to kind of throw jabs at Charles. Charles, help me out here. Help me. I gotta get there. No, but honestly, this is for the Legends program. And the reason that Mike's here is because he does a great job as the CEO of Buddy's Home Furnishings at the moment. But he's also been the 3-time president of APRO, which is the Association of Progressive Rental Organizations. And one of only, what is it, 2 that has made a 3-time term?
Wow, you've done a little history. That's what they say. That's what they say. I think that is correct. I've tied the amount of time, but it's been a great ride and happy to turn the reins over to Dan. He's doing a great job kicking it off, and Charles is phenomenal. So the industry
is doing a great job. Yeah. I agree. And so was this like an FDR thing where they were like, listen, he can't we can't go for another term. we got to fix this. How does the APRO term work? You have, what is it, 2 years, right? Is it a 2-year term that you serve? And then you go back up for, let's say, the recognition of, or the ability to take that chair again. And then the board either votes on it or they just say, it's time to bring on a new body. How does that work?
No, every year, those that have been elected renounce their positions and are reelected by the board of directors. Nominations happen and the board votes, and that's how it works. So 3 years, I think the first time I was elected, and the next year I drop, and then I get reelected. And so this time I said, hey, I've been through three years. There are other people that are excited about this, and the continuity of APRO is getting everyone's voice out there. And you don't want to be sitting too long, but certainly a privilege to serve the industry at that level. Appreciate the confidence in the board of directors. And we navigated, some times that we had to manage through. We had to manage through a change in CEO. We had to manage through, some membership decline and then a bounce back with getting membership back up. So, very excited about what we've accomplished. Very excited about the of where we are today and whose hands it's in driving the bus. Charles and his team, they're doing a phenomenal job and really helping the board, making it easy, making decisions easy. So very excited about the path forward and the, technology that we're getting into, writing books, doing podcasts, making sure that we get information out there about our industry. That's important. The message is important. That's why we go to Washington every year. We want to get the message out. We want to get the message out, not just about our industry, but about the customers we serve. And those customers are both our associates and the paying customers. Really important for us to protect them. And I love
Absolutely.
that as a backbone for the industry.
Well, I got to say, I didn't know much about Jill when Jill was here. I was more of a I played more of a background situation then. I was just an RM. I came and I bought stuff. I didn't really have the same situation that I have now. And then when Danny and I decided that we wanted to start taking on the podcast and start really kind of stretching it out a little bit more of that, when we finally started kind of getting into our stride, Danny made a move and then Charles came in. So in all of that, I really didn't get to meet her that well, but I can tell you right now, from what I can see, and I can't compare as much, but I can tell you, he hit the ground running. He's got a lot going on and he's doing a very well playing. We talk about this all the time with the APRO staff. It's like it used to be where Waldo. It's like, where's Charles today? And I can honestly say, I mean, he's probably traveled all 50 states 3 times over at the time that he's been there. But he does such an amazing job showing up and being there, representing APRO and the support that they have and they give, and just kind of showing there's a new sheriff in town and this is a whole different ball game. It just looks, feels brighter, newer, more compliant, more, you know, when you have a guy who has that kind of ambition, like you said, we got the book, we got the podcast, there are other things that are in the works. And if you don't know about it, they're coming. It's just nice to see that, you know, sometimes people are like, I don't know what else to do. And then you find somebody with that drive to say, oh, but there's a lot. Let me show you what that is. Talking about drive and ambition, when did you decide, you know what? I think I belong to the RTO industry. Before you even started, what, because everybody has that story, and nobody was like RTO before they got into RTO. You think, I've had car salesmen, I've had nurses, I've had all kinds of people. What did the young Michael Bennett do before the insertion of himself into the RTO industry?
Well, how deep do you want to go?
That's a rabbit hole, Pete. That's a rabbit hole.
I'd say, just a quick snapshot. As a kid, I always found ways to make money, and we'll just bypass that. Whether it's Kool-Aid stands, whether it's, yard sales, whether it's buying candy and selling it for double the cost, whatever I could do to make a buck back then as a kid. We didn't come from much. So, you were hustling, and that's the key. You had to earn something. So, but fast forward through high school and college, graduated from Weber College, and then got into the hotel business. Actually, I was in hotel sales management. And for about 9 months, I got a little bored with it, to be honest, but it was corporate sales. So I did a lot of door to door, handshaking, a lot of what we do in RTO, getting out there and doing that guerrilla marketing. So that came early to me, but that's where I kind of entered into the sales arena. But I found an opportunity to open up my own business about 9 months in. I heard there was a problem, and the problem to solve was turning apartments. When people move out, how do you get apartments to be new again for the next tenant? We call it turnkey. And so I heard about it, knew nothing about how to do it. Didn't know how to paint, didn't know how to, clean. Yeah, we all know how to clean. Some of us better than others, but I just said, hey, I could do this. And so I started talking to people, figured out how to get the equipment, and decided really to quit the job and start the business. So got into that, learned business management, learn how to do my taxes, learn, all the things that you need to do, go out, sell, get an account, build a crew, build a team. And so, I was in that. There is some story within that, but I'll fast forward because we have limited time and I don't want to bore your audience. But, 5 years in, I sold the business to a competitor. It was good for me. And I exited and got into the healthcare consulting business. So I always loved numbers and loved finance. And I had an opportunity with a company called Stoneburner Associates out of Atlanta, which is where I grew up. And I started with them as a healthcare financial consultant and went into hospitals, doctors' offices, mostly MRI units, actually. MRI was a big thing back then. My job was to teach people, doctors, how to manage their money, how to collect. So enter collections. And what I would do is go into units instead of turning.
That's a ball game right there. Collections in itself, to teach somebody how to, somebody how to bill one thing is one thing. To teach them how to collect on it, that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, you have to have an approach, but you also have to be a human. You have to talk to people like they are people. Treat them like family, but have understand what the terms are of the agreement and make sure that they understand that you're there to hold them accountable, but also to help them and figure out a way to get, that payment. So I spend time on helping people collect money, helping boards and hospitals. Instead of turning your public over to collection agencies and ruining their credit, how do we collect money the old fashioned way with relationships and commitments and follow up? And that's really where I learned collections. So there I am at sales, there I am at business management, building teams, and then you hit the ground running on collections and put that together. Well, here comes RTO. The business sold that I was working for. I was asked to relocate and do a lot of traveling. And I felt like after just getting married, that wasn't what our marriage needed. So I turned the page and said, we're staying put here in Orlando, Florida, and let me pick up the paper. Back then people advertised in papers. It's incredible.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't even happen anymore.
Yeah, that's when you said the legends, I know you're doing the Legends series. I don't consider myself a legend, but I guess from a timestamp standpoint, if you had a paper and you're picking it up looking for jobs, that kind of marks me in time. It makes me, I
puts you
guess,
in the
a
ball
legend.
game.
Yeah. So I found Rent-O, and I answered the call, and at that point, it was to Rent-A-Center. It was a franchise of Rent-A-Center, the largest franchise they had, and they had Florida. And Pete, I went through like 6 interviews. Today, we do an interview and we hire somebody quick, right? I went through 6 interviews to get a job that paid me minimum wage with a 4-year education. Now, why did I do it? I did it. Oh, and by the way, I started on a truck, right? So, not only that, but you're going to go out and you're going to make deliveries and returns, and, that's what you're going to start. And that's not what I went to college for. But I met a guy named Tim Hogan, who was at that point a zone manager, a multi-unit, and he really sold me on the opportunity of rent-own. And that was back in 93. And I said, you know what, Tim, I'm going to join Rent-Own. I'm going to join your team because I believe in you, because that's what our business is. It's about people. And as long as you show me the light at the end of the tunnel, I'll keep striving for it. And if you turn it off, I'm out of here. I'm out. I'm not going to waste time. I'm not going to waste your time, but I've got a mission. I want to succeed. I want to help you, and you're going to help me progress. I know people say that all the time. They want your job. Okay, great. But a lot of people don't achieve it because that's what they're saying to get the job. I'm in it. We're going to help each other. And finding that partnership with that person above you every single part of your career is really important, to make sure that you're helping the person ahead of you, but also stressing what you're looking for. Hey, I need something out of this too. We need a win-win. So that's where I started. And I spent the first 10 years of my career working through management into multi-unit management with Rent-A-Center in Florida. And I'll pause there. I don't know. I can tell you.
Well,
the thing is, go down the road as far as, the whole career real quick.
Well, we're gonna touch on that, because honestly, even just stepping back a second, and I believe it was Gary Vee that said this, and I could be wrong. I've quoted him a few times on, I don't know, it originated, and I believe it did. But back in the day, that was one of the things that sometimes he looks in for. People who are going to be management or people who have drive, somebody who used to go out and hustle as a youth in different ways. And, whether it was like the baseball cards, whether it was the basketball cards, whether it was the paper route, whether it was the candy, and Buffett started out with the candy. And it was one of those things, like, you can tell the talent up front. It wasn't, you don't need an education for the hustle. You need an education to fine tune it. And so, when you said that, and then as you're going, it's funny because I hear you talking about, the collections and the sales, and it's spoken like a CEO. I could hear it coming out of you as you're speaking and saying it. But, 6 interviews, Tim Hogan in 93. Now, there are 4 companies that we're going to talk about. Am I right? It's Rent-A-Center, it's RentWay, it's Aaron's, and then we landed at Buddy's. And this is where the impact really comes. That's what I'd like to think, that the impact really comes in. But yeah, take me back to the Rent-A-Center days, if they're number 1 on the list. And how did you transition through them? If you could, what was it, something that you took away from these businesses? Because even though we do all the same thing, and I always tell everybody, McDonald's is maybe the number 1, but Burger King does the same thing in a different way. right? Wendy's does the same thing in a different way. They are completely different entities, yet they all serve what you would sound like is the same thing, but they're not. What was it, as you're going through these, what was something you can take away from them?
Yeah, I think Rent-A-Center was about a system. And it doesn't matter whether it
Yes.
was franchise or corporate, you had a system that you followed. In my day, back then, we aren't at Aaron's yet. Rent-A-Center was very entrepreneurial as a corporate, as a franchise, right? And when we went to corporate, it was very structured, but still the same system. And my takeaway was to blend a business. You have to have the entrepreneurial spirit and have the ability to make decisions, but you also have to follow a rigid system at times because it's the system that actually produces the result. So finding that balance, I think that's what it really taught me. And of course, that first 10 years, I bounced around everywhere. I mean, I started in Florida. I started in Orlando. I ended up in Miami. I went up to Gainesville. So I pretty much did the bottom, the middle, and the top of Florida. And
They did send you all over.
yeah, so I also honed my skills with understanding there's going to be a lot of problems, a lot of different people that you're going to work with, but you have to use that system and you have to encourage people to get what they came here for, not just a paycheck, but find out what it is that they want, why they're here and how can you help them along the way to achieve that. Take a personal interest in people and you'll get so much back. Some people call that servant leadership. You can put a tag on anything you want, but you got to serve people. That's what this industry is about. So I think as I look back, Rent-A-Center at that time and still today is a very good company. But I was very proud, and I've been proud of every single company for different reasons. But very proud of that foundation that Rent-A-Center gave me. And I look back and I see one thing that happened. We were on 3 times, Pete, in my 10 years. The industry, Rent-A-Center had 3 different managers, and one of the ones at the very end was when Renter's Choice bought Rent-A-Center. And Ernie Talley, Mr. T's, early industry before my time. Ernie Talley bought that company and he had vision. And one thing I take away, and I often tell the story that when Ernie came in, he looked at the business and he said, "Hey, we're going to flip these boxes upside down. We're going to put what we want in those boxes. We're going to get core items at great prices. And we're going to get rid of all the things that people can afford with a paycheck. We want to get core goods and we want to get them at great prices and give great service." He kept it simple and we understood it. And I watched that company go from 15, 16 bucks a share to 80 and split in 5 years. So, he had a vision and he made it simple. I mean, the man carried a pocket card around with him with names on it in his pocket of the people he met that were going to help the success of his business. So, I look at that and say, hey, he's in touch with the people. He's out there, he's present, and he has a vision and a strategy, and he's going to follow that strategy. And I think that in itself, if you can get people bought into that, you can do great things. You can build a culture.
But quick story. I
Yeah.
was actually on the Renter's Choice side.
Mm.
I had no idea that we were even going to do anything as grand as that. Renter's Choice, I was so busy again, and we'll get back to this on the truck because at the time my account management was, get in, get your calls done, make sure that you take care of everything, load up your truck, and then you have to take care of, deliveries, the services, the returns, the repairs, whatever you had to do, take a lunch, probably go back on the road, try to get some marketing in as you have the ability to, and get a second call through in a daytime. We did that in shirt and tie. And I remember those days very, very, very well because in South Florida, it was a warm day, as you know. And so when I heard about the whole Rent-A-Center deal, I was like, okay, wow, this is different. We actually had a Rent-A-Center about 4 or 5 miles away. And that whole thing was huge. It was huge. And when I really started getting into it, because at that point I was just an account manager, I didn't really know much. But, as the upper levels of management started kind of filling us in what was going on, when we converted, I mean, it was like you said, it was like this trajectory where we just kind of took off and everything was so important. It was there were so many great names of people that I met and knew back then that are now also probably legends in their own right. But Mark Spees, Dana Goebel, a couple of the guys that were on top of the ladder, when Ernie Talley, took a step back, and it was just crazy. It's crazy that you mentioned that, because that's actually my start was in Renter's Choice with somebody who did the same thing. I had no idea what Rentone was, and he was doing his job by going out there, and he saw somebody, I don't know what he saw, but he said, you know what, I like you, I want you to come on by, and he sold me the dream. And like you, I said the exact same thing. You know what, I'll try it. But I mean, I was working at a bank at the time, so I was like, I don't know if this is going to work for me. It's not what I do. But if I find value in it, we'll make it go. And here we are years later. Now, I'm not the CEO of Buddies, but at the same time, I would tell you that I agree with you 100%. Like, if you give that leadership, you give that value, and you create those relationships with the people that work for you, with you, and around you, they will last. They will stay, at least the ones who want to. So that's awesome to hear. So then you're doing all this. You're going from Orlando. You're going to Miami. You're literally the face of Florida. What transitioned from there to RentWay?
So I'd been with RAC for 10 years, and some of the folks that started on the franchise side ended up with RentWay. And there was an opportunity for a vice president of operations in the Carolinas, and they reached out to me, solicited me. So I interviewed and decided, this is where the next step of my journey begins. There was a couple of promotions that happened in Florida. I was entertained for that, but unfortunately, for some reason, they decided not to, select me. So I felt like, okay, again, light at the end of the tunnel, right? I was here, I was working, I was successful, getting plaques, accolades. However, it's not all about that. It's not about the attaboys. I wanted to progress, and I said, hey, let's take on a challenge. And at that time, um, it was a tough time to make a pivot, because RentWay had just gone through some improprieties, accounting improprieties, and it seemed like from the outside looking in that they were, done with that. And I saw them as a competitor in Florida, saw that the opportunities they had, honestly, in their operation, and felt like I could make a difference. So I took the interview, and after taking that interview, they made me an offer, and I moved my family to the Carolinas, and took over what I didn't know. I guess I didn't ask enough good questions, which was the worst region or vision that they had in the country. So that was fun. It definitely caused me to dig deep. But once again, it's about the people. How are they being treated? What are the problems? What are the pain points? Any company I've gone into, it's usually there's been a problem, or they're going through a transition. And the first thing you got to understand is, what is the problem? What is the pain point? If you can get those whiteboarded and understand what it is, talk to the people, make sure they understand that you understand, and that they're going to be a part of the solution, and they have ideas, and those ideas are what's going to propel us more than likely to getting where we need to be. That was the Carolinas. I started out with the Georgia division, then it was the Carolina division. They shifted me, but that was a tough time. I made the transition. I was excited about the opportunity, but about a year in, Pete, they decided to make a pivot and ask me to step down or step out. And I don't mind sharing that, because we all have struggles in the career, and I've skipped over quite a few of my struggles in the personal life up to this point. I'm not going backwards with you. But I will tell you, I had an opportunity. The division was bleeding. After a year, we turned a buck, literally a buck in profit. But that wasn't enough. Unfortunately, they needed a lot more based on where the company had downshifted from. They had already divested some stores with Rent-A-Center, but I think we had about 1,200 stores, and then down to 800 stores. And when I came in, and so they said, hey, if you'd like to take a region, or you can step away. And I said, wow, I hit the gas here, right? I turned a profit, although a very small one. This place was on fire, right? But what I loved about RentWay, and I always take away the good, I learned from the tough and maybe the bad. But what I learned about RentWay is, and I'm speaking to all the RentWay people that have been out there, is the welcome, wanted, and important culture. We are family. that was always there no matter what. And I'd say it strengthened during the accounting and proprieties. And they had some great management. Really. I mean, there was great people there. It's just unfortunate that sometimes people above you or out of your line of sight might make decisions that end up impacting the company, right? But the people at the level of execution, us in the field, the people that were in the field, the ones I joined were phenomenal people. And that's why I joined. I knew some of those people. They migrated from Comcoa or Rent-A-Center over. They followed leadership. And so I did the thing that most people didn't think I would do, which was renounce my title, because titles don't mean anything, Pete. They really don't. They don't mean anything. Okay, people mean everything. And so I took the challenge. I took over what was the second worst out of 102 regions, and within 9 months, brought it in the top 10. And I did it specifically because some of the people from Florida followed me up to the Charleston area, and I wasn't going to desert those people. You know, you show your character when the chips are down, and
Absolutely.
and you got to power through, and you got to struggle through with people. That's important. And so I stayed on, and we you know, at the end, management was kind of bragging, you know, about, hey, look what's happened here. And that's good. And that was my cue. That was my cue to say, you know what, I've done enough, and it's time for me to look for something that's going to challenge me more. And I don't know if I just got lucky and got out, because that ended up selling, the whole company ended up selling back to Rent-A-Center. And that's how RentWay went away, right? But again, great people. I don't necessarily agree with the decision, but it taught me a lot to, you know, to take that step. And you know, I learned a lot about myself, that, you know, you can say titles don't matter, but when you say, hey, I'll downshift, you know, I'm gonna go from fifth to fourth or third, and then you help people, and you show your, again, success through those people, that's great. And I, you know, when that was done, a few of those people that followed me, I got them back to Florida, and with Rent-A-Center, a couple of those people I left, and I was solicited again. And it actually was one of my regional managers that I managed, James Pearson in Atlanta, made a call to a guy he knew at Aaron's, Tristan Montanaro, and said, hey, you need to talk to this guy. And he's like, well, you know, and I talked to James. I was like, James, what did you do that for? I mean, I'm your supervisor, and you called him and told him. He goes, because you're good people. And, you know, I knew that they were looking for somebody in Atlanta. So I hit it off with Tristan. He came over and met me in South Carolina for dinner one night. And I told him, I said, really, I appreciate it, but I'm not looking for a lateral move. I'm looking for something else. And that was early. That was after I had shifted down, and James had called about me taking over a regional position. And so I told Tristan, I said, look, let's stay in touch. And about 9 months later, 8-9 months later, he called me up and he said, hey, there's an opportunity here. There's, you know, and if I wasn't a VP at Aaron's in my position, I would be partnering up, you know, and running this company. And so he said, there's an opportunity where I know somebody in franchise is looking for an operator. And so I said, all right, I took the interview and decided this is what was right for me. I'm going to join Aaron's. And a couple of the people that were with me at RentWay decided they wanted to come with me. And we formed that partnership. I went over to run the second largest franchise at Aaron's, and also was a minority equity partner in the deal. And
wow.
Yeah. So that was part of the negotiation, and, you know, got in, and these units that we got were in the 40,000 average range. You don't make money at that with Aaron's. You don't make money normally in rent to own with that.
Correct.
And so about 3.5 years, well, let's just say, once again, went over what are the problems? Let's whiteboard them. What's the pain points? I wanted to make sure that everybody that came over on my team, because it was all multi-unit management, there were gaps to be filled, they learn Aaron's program. And Julie Scott, great person, was a trainer for Aaron's, and I wanted to get my people in those classes and learn and really engulf, digest, immerse in the business that was Aaron's. And so we did just that. We all went to a hotel room. I put up big Post-it notes on the walls. We wrote down everything we had learned the first month in. We came out with a strategy and we went to work. We got the people together. We had consistent store visits and meetings, set the strategy, set the tone, and we started following the program. That was one of the big issues. We followed the program. We got involved in the purchasing program. We got involved in the marketing program instead of just trying to buy what we thought was the right thing or something cheap. Marketing, you got to do it, right? You got to touch new faces. And Aaron's, had a website and had a flyer and, had a guerrilla marketing program. And so we went after it. But 3.5 years in, we hit, I think it was 111,000 average per store. And
Nice.
at that point, it was time to divest. That was right around '08 when the Great Recession hit. And ownership said, hey, look, I think this is the right thing to do. And at that time, it was the right call. I felt like we had so much more to give, built a beautiful team. The people were awesome. And again, people. And I was just fortunate to be, in that leadership position and helping those people along the way. So,
I would tell you, I actually literally have on here, where were you in the 2007, 8 financial crisis? I literally had that question on here. And it's funny that you come across that because I think it affected a lot of us differently. I wasn't in that situation, but it's very different. And, the welcome, wanted, important. You are not the only person that has brought that up from that era, from that, it was something that stuck to a lot of people. And it's crazy how many, many, many years later, out of all the things that I hear, being in the position that I'm in and talking to the people that I see, that's something that comes up quite often. It was a great part of the culture that they built. And it was amazing to hear that. So if you're looking at where you've been and what you've done, how important were the setbacks? Were they just as important as the successes?
Yeah. I mean, look, that's like sharpening the sword, right? It makes you stronger. At any time you have a setback, you have two options. You can either complain about it, just try to justify and complain, which is a no in my book. That is management principle 101. Do not justify and blame. If you are a person that wants to justify and blame your performance, you're going nowhere. So you got to accept it. You got to face it. Hell, write it down. Write it down and look at it and say, okay, I can't figure this out. Who are the people around me that I could talk to that could help me figure this out? Bring people in. There's a lot of talent out there, and titles don't matter. They don't matter. People matter. Anybody. Big O Tires. Big O Tires. I heard about this one time. So I was in a meeting, and I think the guy that was running Big O Tires talked about how they saved it. And I guess there was a problem at one point. I took him for his word, and they were going to go bankrupt. And they brought everybody together, all the guys in the white shirts that were the managers, and they brought everybody together into a meeting, and they said, hey, what can we do? And they didn't have an answer. So they went out and got on site, and they brought their people in and said, hey, what can we do different to save this company? If we don't do something to get our revenues up, we're going to close. Right? We're all going to be out of work. And it was, as the guy said, because I don't label people like this, but I'm going to quote it. He said, there was a guy, a grease monkey. Okay. A guy that works on cars. His hands are all dirty. He's in the back of the pack and all the management's up front. And he goes, hey, I got an idea. And he says, what's your idea? He goes, I think when people pull in the parking lot, we ought to run out there with our clipboard and we got to find out what their problem is and we got to fix it as quick as we can. Now, I think that's kind of how he said it. But the deal was get to the customer quick. People are getting into our parking lot. They're walking in. They're waiting in line to be serviced. Get out there at the car. Find out, hey, what's going on? How can I help you today? Start making notes. Walk them in. Turn them over. And let's get them serviced. Let's take care of them. That right there supposedly saved that company. That one idea. So titles don't matter. That's what that taught me when I heard that. It's people that matter. It's the ideas. And sometimes trying people's ideas, even when you know that maybe you think you've not tried it and maybe it didn't work for you, it doesn't matter. It matters about the passion of the person that wants to try it. They may actually do a better job than you. So don't doubt people. I got a little
Did you ever
off
have
track.
one of those? Did you ever have one of those occurrences where there was some time that you were up against the wall, there were things that needed to be figured out, and somebody on your team or somebody from the same team, whether it be the Rent-A-Center team or the RentWay team, that came up and said, Mike, I think this is a great idea. I don't know if it's going to work. I think this is a great idea. And implementation kind of showed from the grassroots side of it, from somebody who sees it every single day, the solution, almost as simple as that seems, was a little bit out of grasp and thought. And now somebody brings it to the forefront. We use it, and there it is.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so many opportunities where, and I'll approach it from this. In management, you're going to talk to people and they're not always going to agree with you. They're going to have their own ideas. And sometimes it's just better to allow that person to go out there and do it. Even if you think they're going to fail. You asked me, have you had those moments where, you fail in essence and you learn from it? You've got to let people fail. That is part of the job. You just have to minimize the risk, the downside risk of that failure. So yeah, all the time. It could be, someone says, I want to run this marketing promotion. And you're like, yeah, we ran that and I've seen the data on that. But you're like, they're passionate about it. They're passionate. Phil, Phil. He
I
was
know,
on
Phil.
a call the other day and we were with the marketing group. That's probably why it popped into my mind. And he says, hey, we want to run the Cyber Monday and, we want to do a discount. And I'm like, gosh, there's franchisees that don't want to put discounts, in these things. They don't want to give money away, especially at Christmas when people are going to be, putting money down. And I'm like, well, hey, what if we just do, pay a week, get a week? I mean, that's like the oldest promotion in rent-own, right? You don't.
And that was chiseled in the first listings
But
of what happened
yeah,
to rent to own and the first EDDMs. Buy a week, get. I think that was my mantra for the first 2 years of my rent to own career.
yep, yep. And so, I say that thinking, okay, anybody would accept that. Any franchisee would be like, yeah, I'll give them a week down. So if you want to put an offer in there, go ahead and put that in there. Maybe that's a starting point. Now, it doesn't have to be my idea, but and then the people start asking me, well, why just a week? And I'm like, well, why not? Specifically, we market to different channels, right? And over 80% of the customers that put in orders at Buddy's online are new customers. They're maybe seeing our offer for the first time. We internally think, oh gosh, yeah, pay a week, get a week. We're not excited about that.
Everybody's seen this. Everybody's seen this.
We're not excited about it. But what about the new person that's never gotten into our industry or never seen an offer? That could be like, wow, I can spread it thin to win. I only have $100, but if I could put, 30 down here and get this, I've got 70 that I can spend somewhere else for presents. So we talked through all that. And again, adults want to know why. So you explain the why. And all of a sudden people started getting energy and they came up with a promotion. I got the heck out of the way. But it wasn't my idea. I threw something into the punch bowl and they ended up deciding what else was going in. And ultimately they drank the punch. And
Well, they
hopefully,
say the biggest spark, some of the biggest fires come from the smallest sparks, and just giving them an idea and letting them, understand it, grow with it, and have ownership of a part of it gives them that buy-in to say this is going to work. And I think half the problem or half the situation that we face right now is that, it's not that the idea is good or the idea is bad. It has merit or it doesn't have merit. I think the idea is if you have the buy-in from whoever's pitching this idea and whoever's implementing it will be a vastly different outcome than if they don't. And you can have some people who have the same tools, the same, hey, I got to buy a week, pay a week, versus let me show you the opportunity that I have for you today. You came in on the best day where you can only put, whatever this dollar amount is, I can stretch it out for you and we can make this more happen. And when you compare that to somebody who's just, it is what it is. I think this is an old promotion versus somebody's like, I don't care if it's old or not. The idea is that I need to make the best decision that I can for the customers that are walking in my door right now for this fourth quarter to make it happen. This is what we got to do. And when you have that buy-in, how different is the outcome? Regardless of what you're doing, how different is that outcome? And then, as you're looking at that and you're coming away from that. So you said that this was at 2008, right? Where did you go back into rent to own immediately after that? Wasn't there a small gap between that and
Not
Buddies?
that one. Backstory, Pete, talk about struggle, right? When you're a father and you have two daughters and a wife, and you've made a commitment that if you're going to have kids, someone's got to be at home raising those kids. I
Yes.
grew up latchkey. I grew up for a period of time through divorce, single mother, taking responsibility as the older sibling to get things done. And, when you find along your career, it pivots, changes. I mean, that was a big jump going from Rent-A-Center to RentWay. That was not only was that renouncing my title and taking a step down, maybe taking income down, as I recall, but that affected my family. I mean, that's what you learn is how to. We deal with people, but there's the business side and there's the personal side. You got to manage both sides when you're dealing with people. Now, as people in business, if business is going good, don't mess up. If personal, don't bring you the negative in from personal if something's going wrong there, and vice versa. Keep one half in good state, right? But yeah, what happened around '08, we ended up selling back to Aaron's, and I stayed around to close down and transition the business over to Aaron's, making sure all of our coworkers transitioned right, felt good about the opportunity of joining corporate. I mean, really, we ran the business like corporate, so it was an easy transition within the same system for them to make that pivot. But at that time, and then Ken Butler, who I will always be indebted to, made me an
I
offer.
love Ken. When I had him on the show, it was an amazing time. Just even
Yeah,
being around him was amazing.
yeah,
I grew up with him. He was one of those legends that I never thought that I would ever get to meet in my life. And when I did, I hate to say I was a little bit of a fanboy, but it was just great to sit down with him and have that conversation. Because when I grew up, especially in the Rent-A-Center days, Ken Butler was a boogeyman. He was like, Aaron's is around the corner. That is something that we have to work for. We have to make happen. And he's a force. He's a force
yeah,
du jour for sure.
yeah, yeah. So I had met Ken early on, and he had tracked our franchise and tracked me. And at the conclusion of this, he came to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to have you come to Atlanta and sit down with me. I'd like to talk about, the potential of you staying on with Aaron's. I have an opportunity for you." So, I traveled down to Atlanta, and Ken and I talked, and he said, "Hey, look, I've got an area up in the Midwest, Rust Belt area, Canada, and I'd like for you to be a VP of operations for us." And that was just phenomenal. I said, "Okay, where do I have to go?" And he goes, "Well, pick somewhere up there." So I moved my family to Fishers, Indiana, which is the northeast side of Indianapolis, and
Much colder than Florida.
yeah, much colder than Florida. So, bounced from Florida to South Carolina. Now I'm over in India, if you're tracking. And so, he asked me at a conference, he blurted out to me, I remember one time, and everybody was, in there at a company. And I said, "Bennett, what are you going to call it?" And one of the guys, Greg Beloff, leaned over, good guy out of the Carolinas. He's a VP still today, I believe. He said, "Hey, because he's from there," he says, "Great Lakes operations." So, and I think, all right. And I said, "Great Lakes operations, Ken." And he goes, "All right, well, that's what we're going to call it." And so I kind of dubbed it Glow. I turned that into, I love EDM music. And so, I love that glow, right? I love the lights. And so, yeah, we had fun with that. And I was up there 6 years in Indianapolis, serving Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, lower half of Ohio, and northern half of Illinois, and all of Ontario, Canada, which was corporate at that time. So, yeah, I was up there for 6 years, and things changed. Not to go into. Ken's got a book. If you want, and you're still a fanboy, shout out to him and say, "Hey, can I get a copy of your book?" It's a great read. Talks about his history. And, Ken found his way out of Aaron's after many, many years. And that was very unfortunate. And a lot of, there were the people internally that said, "Geez, we hate it." And the company started changing. And then there were people, that were supporting the new camp, and many of them still there. But a lot some of them still there, but a lot of them pay homage to both. They learn from this transition and they've, continued on. Matter of fact, Julie Scott's still there. She's running franchise operations, and I think she's just hit her 20th anniversary. I think it was 20. Sorry, Julie, if I'm wrong. But needless to say, I was in there for 6 years. We were making a run at opening up a lot of stores. And then, I got time off. I was affiliated with a person who was trying to, through the company he owned, trying to buy Aaron's, and management didn't take to that. Now, they knew from day one that I was on the advisory council, but all that meant was I'd get a call now and then about rent to own, and it was more so for the owner than it was for me. But I said, hey, I have nothing to do with that, didn't even know. I think management was a bit protective back then, was a little concerned. It had changed over. Ken wasn't there. And I got a year off, Pete, and that's another dip in the career. It's like, whoa, wait a minute now. I've been in this career like 20 years at this point, literally, and I think 22 around that time. Really? I mean, wow. And here's my family again. I'm sole earner, but I signed the deal. I took the year off, and during that time, I was talking to different people. I had to stay out of the industry, but there were interested parties, and I waited out the time and stayed connected. And then when the year was up, I was actually on my way to Florida to do some scouting. Ownership at that time had offered me to come down and said that the opportunity to run Buddies was coming open. And I said, I'd love to come down and meet the people, visit some stores without, don't tell them. I want to see the culture as it is. And I bought into it, and I thought, hey, this is great. But I made a second trip down to do another visit. It's a big move coming back. And on my way back down, I got a call from Rent-A-Center. And then they said, hey, we'd really love to have you interview. And I said, well, I'm actually going down for my second interview and probably going to accept this position. But if you want to talk, I'd love to talk with you. And they said, all right, we'll fly you out. So they flew me out when I got here, and I interviewed back in Plano. And after going through some interviews, I decided the right thing for me at the time was, because I don't think the Buddies opportunity was ready just yet. The family that had been a part of it were still running it for the new ownership. And I said, I need something to sink my teeth in. I need stability for the family. I love Rent-A-Center. They taught me an awful lot. And, why not? They have this thing called Acceptance Now, which is the virtual rent to own. The guy that's running it, Mark Denman, met him, just loved the guy. And the guy that was working with him as his first up was Ron Schoolcraft. And Ron was really running the operations, helped to really start it. And he was my assistant manager back when I was a regional manager in Tallahassee, Florida. And I remember going.
I got to tell you,
yeah,
it is so amazing. I tell everybody all the time, in the world of rent to own, I have seen the shift of people in the business, whether they follow you to another company, and not following you, but you guys end up together in another company, or you will end up working for someone who used to work for you, or vice versa. As large as this industry has become, it's still tight knit to the point where you can come across people that you've been with for years later. I've even done it here. I've done it at Rent King. I've done it here, and you come across these people, and as long as you keep those relationships and those values the same, and it's amazing what it could do for your career.
Yeah. And hey, just to back up a minute, from an Aaron standpoint, love the company, love the culture. Every company transitions. I didn't leave with a bad taste in my mouth, other than I thought they made a bad decision, management at that time, but I understood why. I think, again, you look for the reasons, and a lot of people have hard things in their life, and they keep telling people about these hard things and how it hurt them. I look back and say, how did it help me? I wouldn't be here today talking to you, Pete, if that hadn't happened. So I look back. I mean, I look back and say, thank you, RentWay, for, pushing me and giving me the struggle, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be where I was at. RentWay gave me the opportunity to meet Jay Spearson, who gave me the opportunity to meet Tristan Montanaro, that got me into Aaron's and franchising. And Ken, I met there and got me in on the corporate side. And then, Ken was gone, new management was in, I got a year off. Okay. But there are still people, when you do the right thing by people and when you do the right thing when nobody's looking, people understand your integrity. They can trust that and stick to that. Because, don't lower your integrity for other people and their greed. You know, you need to make sure that you are who you are and you stay true to yourself, and the people around you will see that and they will want to be a part of what you're doing, right? At whatever level. That's important. But when
Then
when I
you take all these experiences that you've been through, because you have, I mean, this is so far, this is a story. You've got a long list of things that brought you here, and then at the end of this, you end up where you are in a whole different situation where you're literally running this company, a very large company that has some great franchising opportunities, and you get here. How beneficial was it, would you say, that you ended up being in Orlando, CEO of Buddy's Home Furnishings, in the situation that you're in now? Like, I always say, God bless a broken road. I mean, it's always one of those things that you wouldn't have been able to do what you did if you didn't finally get here. And as the CEO and former 3-time champ president of APRO, what does the future look like in your opinion? As we kind of wind down, what is your opinion of where we're going to be in rent to own in the next 5 or 10 years? I mean, you are in the driver's seat of a company that's trying to do a lot of good things. Where do you see us going? Where's the direction?
Yeah, I think first of all, people that would say, "Hey, rent own, is dying out," or rent own has had a lot of ups and downs, just like any business. But it's been around since as far back as I know. With Aaron's, Charlie started in '55. That's his early. Charlie Loudermilk started the business in '55, and there may be others, but that's the one that I've worked with. And I would say every business has a cycle, and you have to stick to it. The one thing I look at for demographically, economically, is that we continue to create people in the income demographic, right, that this industry serves. And I don't see that going away. So there will always be that opportunity out there for our industry. Certainly the industry over the last 10, 15, 20, say even 20 years has pivoted. There's more virtual rent to own that is out there, and we need to embrace it. We need to understand that virtual rent to own brings more people closer to us. When I started, rent to own had a bad name. It had a bad name. It does not have a bad name today. Every business has people that have issues with their business, and every people has people that love their business. That's just current state anytime. But when you look at this industry, I think we're bringing more and more people into it because of virtual rent to own. And even buy now, pay later to some extent is an extension of rent to own, getting the product now and making payments on it. So I think the pivot is that more and more people are using these products, which provides us an opportunity. We just have to stay focused in the brick and mortar world, which I live in, and also, web. I mean, we do web orders, we do, the internet, we follow technology to gain customers, and that's going to continue to advance. But the key to this business, if you're in brick and mortar, is about this, Pete. It's about me and you. It's going to be about you are the final mile, the last mile in this. We've always been Amazon. We've always been Amazon this industry. Before they were built, we were doing the model. Direct to door, white glove delivery, show you how to, we were doing beyond what they do, right? And we still do today. We got to keep doing that. We got to keep taking care of our customers one at a time, making them the number one rule. We serve them. They may not always be right, but we got to find a way to work with them to stay in touch, stay in business. So I do think that that will continue to exist, no doubt about it. I think this isn't a class in macroeconomics, but would certainly say that right now people are having a tough time. We're going through a cycle. You're seeing a little consolidation in the industry. You're seeing some butterfly effect to COVID. People don't want to talk about COVID anymore, but I mean, the reality is the decisions we made and what happened in COVID to our business. As I tell people, it took 3 years to screw it up. It's going to take 3 years to fix it. So
That's true.
2026 will be those 6 years we buy. And I think the people that have the sight, the vision to understand that in itself will get through this cycle, and they'll be the ones that come out strong and they'll be the ones that don't. And that's just business cycles. But I think we're in a little consolidation, and then I think we'll come through it. But while that's going on, we need to advance in the technology. We need to learn more about how technology
Agreed.
can service us. So that, I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but ultimately, if you're in rent own and you're listening to this, you are in good shape. All right, we're gonna continue to be strong. We're going to serve our public. We're going to get our message out both at the state and the federal levels. You can be assured that our industry will continue. So
Well,
hopefully
being a
that.
part of APRO has been something that I've appreciated from day one, whether it be when just seeing what Charles is doing, or a lot of the members, or yourself as the president. It's been great. I love the fact that Dan Fisher has taken that role, not because you're not in it, but because I just love Dan, and you've kind of served, like you said, you kind of served and you're good, and you're ready to step back in the 100% of the CEO of Buddy's Home Furnishings. Some real quick things I want to get from you. What is, from your perspective, the best book that you've read this year?
My, it's actually a book that I've read, previous, which is the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I often go back. I don't read the whole book again, but going back and reading, like the Law of the Lid. You got to reach higher. We all think we have a lid, but the minute that we think that we're going to hit that and we can't get beyond it, that's the problem. You got to reach higher. If I ask you to reach right now, turn around that wall and reach up as high as you can, I bet you give it your best. But I'm going to ask you to reach higher, and I'll bet you're going to get up on your toes. And I'm going to ask you to reach higher, and I bet you're going to find a chair to stand on. And if I ask you to reach higher, if you're the right person, you'll go find a ladder, and you'll just keep on climbing. It's so book wise, I often go back to what helped me at a certain point. Failing Forward is another great book that I've read, because when failure hits you, especially when you're at this level, you don't have a lot of people helping to mentor you. And so when you look at Failing Forward, it's all about understanding that failure is okay, and you may take 2 steps back, but let's take 3 steps forward and make up 1 step. I mean, let's figure out how to get there. And failure is a part of life. It's embrace it. Don't blame and justify. Embrace your failures. You'll come out stronger. You will.
I agree.
Yeah.
Taking a step back, but in the same direction, what is the best book that you could recommend to anyone on your team this year?
I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm going to say the same book. And the reason I say that is there is actually you can buy, we put, when I was on the Aaron's franchise, I put everyone through this. Every week we did a chapter, and you did a chapter of the 21 Irrefutable Laws. There's actually a workbook you can buy with that. We have not done that at Buddy's, actually. So if I were going to do it, I look back at the success, and if there was anything, gosh, Bennett, why didn't you actually go back into the well and do this? So Pete, you might find that I'm going to go do this now, and they're going to hate you.
If anybody says anything, you say, listen, you call the RTO show and you let Pete know, Phil, I'm sorry. It's coming your way. So, one of the 2 books that I'm reading, well, I just read one book that I'm reading now is Never Lose an Employee Again by Joey Coleman. That was suggested to me by Chad Fosdick. We were at a meeting very recently, and he suggested it. I thought it was a good book that I'm reading now. And I just read Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Something that was suggested to me by Will Jackson from R&R Tire and Express. And I can tell you that one of my goals that I started earlier this year was every time that I meet somebody that we have great conversation and there's something to be talked about, if they recommend a book, if it's more than one, I'll pick one, but I'm going to at least try to read a book that anyone ever recommends to me, because I feel like it's important to not only take that advice, but see where they're coming from and learn. We've all been here. We've all done that. how can we learn from each other? Well, maybe I could read some of the things that you've read. So I would love to read as much as Mike Tissett, but I can tell you right now, he's got like 10 books on there every time he goes to the LEAP program or he does something. So I've got to pick one out of his many, many, many books that he has on there.
If you want books, I'll turn around because I've got them.
You've got them too, huh?
Yeah, I've got, I'll give you some books if you don't mind me turning away.
No, but, go ahead.
I love Gapology. Yeah, which is a book of, where there's problems, there's gaps, right? And so how do you fill the gaps? Another book, Start with Why. You ever heard about that book?
Oh, I did read that. Simon Sinek.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely great book.
Good one. Let's see what else is on.
Another book that he has is the Leaders Eat Last. I didn't really. That was a recommendation from Joe Milligan. I wasn't sure where that was going to be on my list. I was looking at it. I said, you know what? I'll just stop. I already read one Simon Sinek book. I did enjoy it. And I actually really did enjoy that book as well. I'll tell you right now. Listen, guys, if you guys want more book recommendations from Mike Bennett, you let me know, and we will reach out and get you a library of things that he wants you to read and look out for. Some of the great things that, I tell you, the takeaway from this, Mike, is that regardless of where you are, what you're doing, do the best that you can at it, and make sure that you learn from the trials and tribulations as much as you do your successes. Never give up. Keep on striving forward. And you know what? You might just be able to one day be somebody that says, hey, you're a legend and I want to put you on my podcast and we can talk about what you've gone through and what you've done and led to the career that you've had. Mike Bennett on the show. Finally, I appreciate it. Tell Phil I'm sorry that things are coming his way, but hey, we all learn from what's going on and I hope that I help him in some way.
Right.
If you guys have any questions or anything that's going on with the Legend series, please feel free to reach out to the show at pete@thertoshowpodcast.com. You can go online. You can buy the swag, find out what's going on with the show at thertoshowpodcast.com. And you can hit us up on all the social media platforms. And I think that, Mike being here as well, we're everywhere. Everybody tries to be everywhere. All the new RTO platforms, they want to be everywhere. Well, we are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, where you're going to see this. Mr. Mike Bennett, I appreciate you being here with me. I appreciate you taking out the time and explaining your story, the places you've gone, done, the ups, the downs, the books, and the idea that, teamwork is 100% the way to go. Lead your team, and make sure that you get them involved in your success. So with that being said, is there anything that you want to end this on? Any note that you want to say, from the Michael Bennett, this is what you should know?
People. Seriously.
People.
Business is about people. If there's anything I can give you, don't shy away from them, engage with them, and find the right partnerships, and people will take you places.
There you go.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate you being on the show. And I will tell you guys, as always, get your collections low to get your sales high. Have a great one.
Thanks, Pete.
Hey everyone, it's Pete Chow here from the RTO Show podcast, and I want to tell you about a company that's making a real difference in the rent-to-own space, Wow Brands. I've seen firsthand how they approach marketing, and let me tell you, it's not just about ads. Wow Brands builds complete digital ecosystems designed specifically for the rent-to-own industry. Their e-commerce and lead generation strategies are built to bring in qualified leads. And did I mention that they are actively working with the rent-to-own industry while also being members of APRO and TRIB? Listen, these folks are passionate problem solvers. They don't just slap something together. They design, build, and scale the kind of digital retail tools your business needs and your customers actually want. So if you're serious about growing, reach out to Wow Brands at wowbrands.com. I trust them, and I think you will too.